Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop, and today we're making a dice tower. Let's dive in. So, yes, you guessed it. We're going to be working with white oak today. I have this scrap that is about a ½ inch thick by about 3.5 inches wide, and I'm going to be making out of this. Now, you'll notice that this has a fairly heavy cup on it, and originally I was planning on flattening it out and making it nice and true, and I thought, why? That's just added effort that isn't really going to be that big of a difference. So that means we're going to be doing dovetails with a cupped surface, and when you actually put the dovetails together, they will interlock and pull each other flat. But the pieces inside you'll see cup in the future, and for something simple like this, it really doesn't make that big of a difference, so I wanted to try something that was less than perfect. We're going to start by cutting the bottom, the back, and the front piece. The front piece is going to be 1.5 inches long, and the back and bottom are both 9 inches long. On the bottom, we're going to cut tails on both ends. And with 1/2 inch, it's really, really nice. 1/2 inch is one of these, it's just designed for dovetails, and they cut into it really nicely, and 1/2 inch dovetails are just so much easier than 3/4 inch dovetails. And I'm not exactly sure why, but they just feel that way. So I have a whole pile of videos on how to cut dovetails. I've done them live. I've done them in every format. I've done how to cut them quickly. I've done how to cut them slowly. I prefer to chop out the pins and the waste in between rather than using a coping saw. It's just one less step for me because you're already going to be doing the chopping work. Why not just do it when you're there? So we're going to remove the piece in between, and then we have our tails. For the last little fine up and clean up, I do a file just to take the edges off of the saw marks, and it makes it just happy. We can transfer that onto the other two pieces and get our pins on the back and the front. And this is one of these things, you really don't need to do dovetails on this. You could just screw it together, as you'll see a little bit later. But dovetails make everything just a little bit prettier. And they add that little touch of something to, they're fun. Especially with 1/2 inch. They're enjoyable. So enjoy the process. Yeah, it's going to be a little more work, but that's what we like. So in between the tail and between the pins, we can then chop those out, file them down, and then hope everything fits. Now with this small 1.5 inch piece, I wanted to take my time and be very, very careful with that, making sure that I didn't break it, which I ended up doing, but thankfully I broke it at the right time where it was easy just to squeeze back together as I was gluing it together, so that's not a huge issue. You see how this is just a little piece, and this will be on the front of the dice tray. So this is where the dice will roll out and hit this when they stop. Do the last little cleanup on that, and then we can put this back, bottom, and front together and glue them up. Do the final little touch-up. You can see how they're a little proud, and that's because partially the board is cupped, and I'm going to then smooth and flatten that out. I'm going to be using a PVA glue. I like to use Elmer's Wood Glue Max. It is my go-to PVA, and it was a great glue on the test I had, and it tends to work a little bit better in my book. So we can pound these together and then clamp them out. The clamping will allow me to draw out the flexibility in the board, so I'm not getting that warping quite as much. And we put on these 90-degree blocks that I printed off a while ago, and those will just hold it roughly in place. It doesn't have to be perfect 90 degrees because we'll flex it a little bit with the plexiglass on the sides. Speaking of the plexiglass, let's lay it here, and let's mark out exactly what size it is. And it's actually going to turn into an L shape that is about 3.5 inches tall, or 3.5 inches wide as it goes up, and then 1.5 inches as it comes out. The piece of acrylic I got is far larger than it needs to be, and so I can get two pieces out of that and have a nice little scrap left over. So I'm going to lay out one of the pieces entirely with a knife marking one side, then I'm going to flip it over and mark the other side, and then I'm going to draw one line all the way across here, and this is where I'm going to snap it. And so I'll mark it on one side and then the other side, and once I get it close, then we can put the edge on the side of the bench, put a backer plate on it, and one good strike and the thing just pops off. And it's kind of one of these happy things when it actually breaks the way you want it to. But as long as you score both sides, it actually works really, really well. So this piece, I'm going to cut this in half, and that is where I'm going to get one piece off either side. And here it really only is important right at that tip, but it came out very happy. So now I have this L shape, and I have two blocks that are exactly the same size, and one of them is marked. And so I found that actually sawing it would be a little bit easier than trying to snap it down. So I'm going to cut down on one angle, And for this, the Japanese saw is actually working really well. The Japanese saw is rather noisy, but it does work. As long as you clamp both sides and it works together, you can run it right down and get a nice, rather clean cut, especially with the two of them together. If you want it even cleaner, you can sandwich wood on either side, and that will stop any chipping. But with this thin piece, it actually didn't chip out much at all. Now we're going to start cutting all of the interior pieces, and I need one piece to parallel the back, and this will create the front of the tower. And so it is going to be determined by the height of the plexiglass, which in this case I think was, 7.5 inches. And then I'm going to start cutting rough 45 degrees. I'm not laying these out. I'm not marking them. I am just eyeballing where 45 degrees and 90 degrees are. And I'm going to be cutting off 3 of these pieces that are roughly about 2 inches long from point to back. The actual size, we're going to trim them up and plane them to their finished size when we fit them in the box. Once I get them roughly to 45, then I can put them in the vise and square them off, and then, square them off to the side, 45 them off to the face. And then we can start experimenting with how big is the back block. The back block actually will have 45 degrees on both ends, and this is where the dice hit the bottom and then roll out into the tray. And initially I made it much larger than it needed to be, and there wasn't enough space for the dice to come out. So I made it a little smaller, and then made it a little smaller, and then made it a little smaller again, and then I found rounding over the front of the tower actually helped out a good bit. In the end, I think that back plate was 1.5 inches long from point to point. So then we can start working on the other 3 pieces, and these will get one rounded nose and then a 45 degree on the other end. That rounded nose just allows them to peel off the bottom a little bit easier. You can see how those will then go in there. So there'll be 1, 2, 3 of those alternating sides as the dice come down the tower. We're not worrying about making these absolutely perfect. Again, this is just a quick and easy project to have a little bit of fun in the shop. You can see how those will go in there, and then it'll all attach to the plexiglass. Now that the glue has dried on this, we can plane it off smooth and clean out the dovetails. This is one of the things I love about dovetails. If you leave them a little proud and leave the sides a little bigger than they need to be, then you can always plane them back to their exact size, and a planed dovetail just looks amazing, and any gaps regularly disappear on that. So I'm going to use a marking gauge to lay out lines that are 1/4 inch in, and then I'm going to start pre-drilling all the holes. I have a 1/8 inch brad point bit. Initially I was using the egg beater, and that works pretty well, but I had 18 holes on each piece. 36 holes in total that had to be drilled in the plexiglass and then pre-drilled in the wood, and then I had to have countersunk, and so at some point, we're holding on to things and trying to make them work together, and you need more hands than you can do with an egg beater drill. And so at some point we bring in the devil-possessed yellow brace. I know, I've been using that a lot more lately. But you can see how I'm going to lay it on here. I'm going to mark where all the holes need to be, then take it all apart and pre-drill all of the holes into the plexiglass. I have the 2 plexiglasses together, and then I back them with a piece of wood so that they're not flexing out of the way. This will allow me to drill through the plexiglass with a nice neat hole. And both screw holes are in the exact same place on both plexiglass pieces. Once those are in place, then we can come in and countersink them and clean out the holes, because we're going to be putting in flathead brass screws. And so all the holes get countersunk on one side of one piece, and then on the other side of the other piece. And then I can start transferring the holes down to the wood. So I can put one in there and screw it in, and then put the other one in and screw it in. And once I have a few of them in there, then I can start working my way around the block. So I'm going to actually put all of the screws into one side of the glued up piece. Now, I know if I keep going with that, I'm going to break a bit, and I only have one that's the right size. So for that, it means demon-possessed yellow brace comes out. It's always good if you learn from your mistakes, and if you saw my video recently making the hand screw vices, I broke several bits on that, and it's one of the nice things about having a power drill is you can keep it nice and steady and get a good clean hole. This hole is a little bit smaller. I measured the sizes for the inside of the threads to fit those in. Now, before we glue all this together, it is time to actually finish all of these parts. So I'm going to coat them with boiled linseed oil, let it soak in as much as it wants, let it soak some more, put some more on there, let it soak again. And once it stops soaking it up, then we can wipe off all the excess. And I really love how this just pops out, especially this particular piece had this dark stripe running through it. really comes out well with this golden color. Then we can wipe off the excess, and then I apply my paste wax. And I usually apply the paste wax right after putting it on there. There's no reason to wait that much longer. So now we can start putting in screws. Everything has been countersunk and has been pre-drilled on the outside of the base, back, and front. So we can put the screws into the base, back, and front. And yes, I could run them all in with a screwdriver, but at some point that really gets tight because I've got 36 of these to go in. So yeah, we'll put the bit in the drill and drive them in by hand. But you have to be very careful with these little brass heads because if you put them in too hard or too fast, they will snap. So then we can start putting in all of the other pieces. And I'm just going to hold them in place and mark them with an awl, then bring them out, and on that awl I can drill the countersunk hole, put them back in place, and put the screw in. So you can see this is a lot of running screws and pre-drilling and getting everything in place. With all of the blocks on the outside of one half of the side, then we can put the plexiglass on the other side. You can see I haven't put in the diagonals up the inside yet because it's easier just to hold those in place with the plexiglass in place. So then we can mark those, drill those holes, and put screws into them, and then continue it up the tower, one diagonal block at a time. So I'll put in both screws from one side, then work up to the next one, and then slowly torque them all down so they're nice and flat and clean and finished. And then the most satisfying part of this all, once all the screws are in, is yes, you can peel off the plastic. And ooh, I really like how this came with, especially with the finish on there. It's very pleasing to be able to see this whole thing. It's a really simple, cheap little build, but it works very, very well. And you can see, dice roll. Hey, happiness. 14. And yes, the first thing we have to do is roll the D20 and find if we can get, hey, a 20 on my first try, of course. Yes, that was the first time I rolled it. Yes, we get a D20. But it's kind of fun, and the kids enjoy it. It's a great little project and a fun way to spend an afternoon. So there you go. Yeah, my family, we do actually do a decent amount of RPG and play with that as a family. And so dice towers are kind of integral to that. And they're a lot of fun. Something like this, really simple to make, just some screws. You can do dovetails if you want. You don't have to. There's lots of little other things you could add into it, with the clear sides. It's just kind of fun to play with and try something different. A pretty quick project that most people can knock out really quickly, and a great one to begin with. So I hope you like this. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, let me know those down in the comments down below. If you'd like to make it a little more detailed of a question, you could actually join our Hive Mind. We have a group on Discord as well as one on Facebook where people can bounce ideas and work with the community, or I can bounce ideas off the group and say, hey, I'm thinking about making a video on this. What do you think about that? So if you'd actually like to be a part of that community, there are links to that down below. Also, if you do hit like, comment, share, subscribe, those things really help out the channel. And thank you. You are helping get us in front of more people and helping the channel grow. So thank you. One step farther than that are all of the patrons on Patreon. Everyone scrolling over here on the side, they are the ones quite literally keeping the lights on and keeping this channel going. Without you, the patrons and members who've clicked the little join button, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. If you'd like to find out more about that, you can find out about Patreon in the description down below, or click the little join button and become a member here on YouTube. We have special perks for both. So thank you. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. You know, every now and then you get yourself into one of those situations that's just a little bit dicey. Why is it that every time I climb up on a tower, why is it that every time I get to the top of the tower, I think, I fart in your general direction?